Hi again. Ezra chapter 5 shows us the people picking their tools back up after a pause. It also recounts a bit of the history that got them to the place where they are rebuilding the temple at all. Verse 5:12 reads, "But because our ancestors angered the God of heaven, he gave them into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar the Chaldean, king of Babylon, who destroyed his temple and deported the people to Babylon." I know it may seem like a bit of a stretch, but I want to suggest to you that the pauses, the long silences, the years when the temple was no longer, was a sort of Sabbath, a rest imposed by God to a people who had forgotten how to rest. It's not a perfect analogy, since of course they were sent into slavery and servitude. Still, that period of time helped them to see the importance of the temple anew. The period taught them much about what it meant to be the people of God, reliant upon God and thankful to God and worshiping God in the sanctuary. When we take a Sabbath, we remind ourselves and we act upon the conviction that God is in charge and capable and trustworthy. When we take a rest, when we realize that God is not in a project or a plan of ours, then we have to let it go. We aren't doing something that earns us favor, really. We're simply trusting God with the whole universe in His hands. Importantly, I believe that we are also rebuilding our capacities. I'm a bit of a runner, and I know that if I run too far, too often, my body doesn't recover, and I get what's called diminishing returns. My body, like anyone else's, requires rest, and our minds, our souls, our emotions require rest as well. It's not a form of weakness for us to meet this need for rest. It's a humbling truth about each of us. We need this weekly rest, we need a seasonal rest, even a yearly rest. We need pauses built into our schedules. I find it helpful, and maybe you will too, to slow down sometimes and ask, why am I doing this? Especially when we get so busy, or we find ourselves doing something that we don't have too much passion for. It's a question I tend to ask myself on longer holidays. I try to think about the year that has passed and the year that might come and ask myself, why do I do what I do? I try to get at the root of my real intentions. This is hard. It involves grappling with ideas like arrogance or wanting to be loved, wanting to be appreciated, wanting to be respected or needed. What is grounding my actions? Those sorts of petty wants or something greater? Are my intentions good? Do I want to parent from a position of love or as one who wants to be respected because my kids are awesome? Is it possible to do both at the same time? The Israelites had to take a time away from the building of the temple. They had to take a time away from Jerusalem itself. It's a time to consider the aspects of their lives and say, what are we doing? Who are we? Why do we do what we do? I believe for us in our Sabbath times and our rests, it's helpful to ask ourselves these questions. Why am I doing what I am doing? Without a laser focus as to why we're doing something, the temple would never have been built. What might we be missing out on if we failed to slow down and ask important questions? The people had decided what mattered was to be the people of God. What mattered was to build the temple and to worship God there. And so they did it, and then we come thousands of years later in their line. What is it we need to be intentional and focused on? What is it we need to be doing that will reverberate through the generations? Let's take the time to really consider that and then go forward from there.